The city of Babruisk is one of the most ancient and beautiful cities of Belarus. It is situated on the right bank of the full-flowing Berezina River, where the Babruiska River flows into. During its whole history, Babruisk has been a major economic, military and political center. Today, it is a key transportation, industrial and cultural center, a glorious city, pleasant to live in and convenient to relax. It is a city with a centuries-old rich history. Babruisk is a city subordinate to regional administration. It is the center of the Bobruisk district. It is situated 110 kilometers away from the regional center, the city of Mogilov. Highways and railways in the direction of Minsk, Gomel, Mogilov, Kalinkovich, Slutsk and Rogachev go via Babruisk. There is also a port on the Berezina River. The population of Babruisk is about 220,000 people. The city celebrated its 620th anniversary in the year 2007. The highlights of the festivities are celebrations in honor of the veterans of the Great Patriotic War and front-rank workers. Unveiling of the City Board of Fame, theatricalized shows, bright concert programs of the international festival, the Garland of Friendship, and colorful days of Chinese culture. They will long remain in the memory of the citizens of Bobruisk and visitors. The archaeological excavations that have been made by Belarusian scientists prove that people lived in this area already in the middle of the first millennium BC. Good weather conditions and advantageous position of elevation over the surrounding country contributed to the emergence of settlements and later of the city of Babruisk. As far back as the 11th century, there already existed a Dragovichi settlement at the inflow of the Babruiska River into the Berezina River. According to the Slavic tradition, the settlement was named after the smaller river that flew into the bigger one. The exact year of the foundation of Babruisk is not known. However, the first mentioning of the city in written documents refers to the year 1387. It had different names: Bobrovsk, Babruisk, Babruisk. Historical chronicles run that at the time of the Kievan Prince Vladimir, on the site of today's city of Bobruisk, there was a village whose inhabitants were involved in fishing and beaver hunting, and that on the banks of the Berezina and Babruiska, fishermen and beaver hunters huddled together. Beaver furs were very precious then, and foreign merchants bought them willingly. At the beginning of the first millennium, there already existed a waterway along the Berezina River, and local population maintained trade links with many countries, including the faraway Rome. In the 1940s, Babruisk becomes part of the Great Duchy of Lithuania. The city belonged to two brothers simultaneously, to Grand Duke Algirdas and Kęstutis, Prince of Trakai. According to the agreement between the brothers, who were overburdened with authority, Babruisk and the rural district around were divided into two parts: the Vilna and the Trakai halves that were legally and administratively subordinated to the Vilna and the Trakai keys. institutions that collected and kept copper tribute. This lasted till the second half of the 16th century. Then they belonged to the Radzivills, the Gashtolds and the Triznas. According to the inventory of 1626, there were 15 streets, 2 lanes, 409 estates, 75 shops, a mill, an Orthodox church and a Catholic church in the city. The treasures found in Babruisk testify that the city had energetic trade links. At various periods, coins were found in Babruisk that were minted in Poland, Grand Duchy of Lithuania, Russia, Spain, the Netherlands, and many other countries. Like any rich city, Babruisk was remarkably well fortified in the Middle Ages. On the top of the hill near the dock there was a wooden castle. The city was surrounded by a 3-kilometer-long wall with 10 towers. You could get inside through one of the 4 gates: Lower Gate, Svislach Gate, Kisilov Gate, and Pond Gate. In 1502, soldiers of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania defeated detachments of Crimean and Ackerman Tatars in the vicinity of the city, 7 kilometers away down the Usa River.
В 1648 году с Украины сюда пришел, как и в другие города Беларуси,
In 1648, one of Khmelnytsky's detachments, under the Cossack chieftain Babruisk's command, came here, as well as to other Belarusian cities. They managed to seize the city. They killed the well-off nobility, drowned the city head, and seized power in the city with the help of the local poor. A detachment was sent to suppress the rebellion, but it was a failure. 2 weeks later, 2 more detachments of Lithuanian soldiers came to the city walls. However, Babruisk's Cossacks and local population repelled the attack. In January 1649, Janusz Radziwill, hetman of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, comes to the city with his army himself. Trying not to lose soldiers in a head-on attack, the nobleman used a trick. He sent scouts to the local clergy, who opened the gates of the city at night in return for their lives. 1648 started bleak times for Belarusian lands. The uprising of Ukrainian Cossacks was followed by a prolonged war between the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and Muscovy, which historians call a bloody deluge. Only in the second half of the 18th century, the general economic recovery in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth affected Babruisk, and it again regained the status of a city, and according to some sources, got Magdeburg privileges. However, it did not manage to make use of the advantages of self-administration. After the second division of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1793, Babruisk, along with other Belarusian cities, became part of the Russian Empire and, in 1795, acquired the status of an uyezd, district city, within the Minsk gubernia. A year later, Babruisk got its coat of arms from the emperor. Its symbols are closely connected with the building up of the Russian fleet on the Black and the Baltic Seas that required loss of mass timber. Since the end of the 18th century, there existed in Russia the so-called Jewish Pale, which banned Jews from living in the central provinces. In addition, the imperial authorities tried to have Jews move from the countryside to the cities. A flow of Jewish population poured into Babruisk, and with their arrival, trade revived along with services, as one would say today. During the war with Napoleon, Babruisk Jews supported the Russian army. From generation to generation, the inhabitants of the city passed the story of the Jewish tenant Nisan Katznelson, who informed the Cossacks about the approach of the French army. In 1886, Jews initiated the establishment of the first fire brigade in the city. Babruisk was made of wooden houses, and fires were a real disaster. In 1854, the city burned down completely, and 20 years later there was again a big fire. 150 houses were burnt down. The insurance company even refused to insure houses not to get burned. 200 people, mainly Jews, became volunteers of the first fire brigade.
В 1902 году царь принял решение своим указом.
By his decree of 1902, the Tsar made the decision to build a fire brigade depot in the city of Babruisk and to build only brick houses in the center of the city. From that time on, the whole downtown area of Babruisk was made of brick. The fire brigade building behind me was also built in 1903. In honor of this fire brigade, the Tsar's silver sign was established. All Babruisk architectural layout was determined by 2 directions that start at the market square. One of them ran into the road to Parichi, and the other went along the Berezina River and then ran into the road to Minsk. Residential areas, mainly of the right outline, were situated between these two streets. Near the square, there was a boat river crossing to the left bank. The road to Rogachov started there. Thus, the city center was a kind of crossing of three roads, and the city itself looked like a half oval resting on the river. This naturally made layout was taken into consideration, regulated, and developed in the process of the urban redevelopment at the beginning of the 19th century. In 1800, the city's first prospective layout was made. The construction of the city until 1810 was made in accordance with it. Redevelopment of the city coincided with building powerful fortifications that turned the city into a fortress. Today, archaeological excavations and large-scale reconstruction are being made on the territory of the Babruisk fortress. At the beginning of the year 2008, the famous Minsk gates and the cast-iron double-headed eagle, a symbol of the Russian Empire that decorated the arch of the gate, were excavated. Specialists study all the findings in great detail. All the precious artifacts will be exhibited at the Museum of Local History. It is planned to construct a modern entertainment and cultural complex on the territory of the fortress. The building of the Bobruisk arena, an immense construction for the city, was a powerful stimulus in this work.
Это место выбрано принципиально именно в Бобруйской крепости. Почему? Потому что вот такие объекты, когда строятся, они...
This place has been selected in the Bobruisk fortress not by chance. Why? Because when such construction projects are being built, they involve all other objects that are situated around. By now, we have placed an order to make a detailed plan of the fortress. It means the plan of the regeneration of the Bobruisk fortress. According to the plan, housing will be built here in compliance with the peculiarities of the 19th century architecture. Everything will correspond to that period. By agreement with the Ministry of Culture and the Research Institute of City Planning, we determined the target use of the buildings. There will be restaurants, hotels, shops and entertainment centers here.
Например, наличие в, скажем, здании, к примеру, развлекательного центра никоим образом не будет влиять на архитектуру.
Let's return to the beginning of the 19th century. Thanks to the construction of the Babruisk fortress, the chronicles began to call Bobruisk a warrior city. During the preparation of Russia for the war with Napoleon, there started the construction of a first-class fortress that was to be one of the best in Europe. Thousands of soldiers and serfs from the Mogilov, Minsk and Chernigov gubernias took part in building the fortress. It had to keep 16,000 people in it. No other fortress in Russia was as useful as the Bobruisk one in 1812, wrote Major General Mikhailovsky-Danilevsky in his book Heroes of the Patriotic War. When the war started, there was only one reserve division there under the command of the artillery Major General Gavril Alexandrovich Ignatiev. It was busy with construction work. Having no orders from his commandment, Ignatiev proclaimed himself head of the fortress's garrison and informed the local uyezds, districts, that he was the military governor of Bobruisk. By the summer of 1812, the bastions of the fortress had already been made and 330 guns were located on them. The citadel was ready for the enemy attack. To ensure a successful advance of Russia's Second Army, commanded by Bagration to Mogilov, and its joining the First Army, Ignatiev helped with transportation. Leaving the fortress, Bagration left there only 4,500 soldiers under Ignatiev's command. The scanty garrison defended the city and the fortress for over 4 months, in spite of the fact that the enemy forces of 12,000 soldiers under the command of General Dombrovsky stood at the walls of the city. By the way, one more page in the history of the city is connected with the fortress. In 1810, the first medical institution in Bobruisk was opened on the territory of the fortress. It was the garrison military hospital that also provided medical assistance to the population of the city. The mentioning of the city hospital for 30 patients dates back only to 1887. It was opened by the Jewish community and was headed by former military doctor Isidor Feiertag, who was called a magnanimous doctor. Emperor Alexander I intended to inspect the military detachments located in the Bobruisk fortress in September 1823. The Decembrists in the Bobruisk garrison decided to use the occasion to seize power. The leaders of the uprising worked out the so-called Bobruisk plan, according to which they intended to arrest Alexander I during the inspection of the garrison, put him in the dungeon of the fortress, and start advancing to the capital. They thought that if they failed, they would have such a stronghold as the Bobruisk fortress, and the Tsar would be their hostage. The uprising in Babruisk was to become a signal for the uprising in Moscow, Petersburg, and other cities. On September 12, 1823, Alexander I inspected the garrison in Babruisk. However, the Decembrist uprising did not take place. Their plan had not been approved by the leader of the Southern Society, Pavel Ivanovich Pestel. Out of 1,000 reasons against the Bobruisk plan, Pestel pointed out the main one: soldiers being unprepared for the uprising. In February 1826, warrant officer Stepan Trusov undertook the last attempt to raise an uprising against Russian autocracy among the Poltava regiment located in the fortress. After the defeat of the Decembrist movement, the Bobruisk fortress was turned into a convict prison where the revolutionaries served their term. Gertsen, a Democrat and writer, wrote, "Let it be Siberia, anything, but only not a terrible prison on the Berezina River." Among the prisoners were Decembrists Vasily Norov, Stepan Trusov, Mikhail Badisko, Vasily Divov, and many others. The dungeons also saw the comrades in arms of Kastus-Kalinovsky. Over 2,000 participants of the uprising of 1863-64. From the end of the 19th century, the Bobruisk fortress held a disciplinary battalion of 900 soldiers, including over 300 sailors of the Baltic Fleet, who were punished for their revolutionary activity. During the Great Patriotic War, the Nazi invaders turned the fortress into a death camp. By the August of 1942, over 40,000 Soviet citizens and prisoners of war were killed here. This is what the Bobruisk railway station looks like now. It was here that in November 1873, an engine whistle ushered in a new period in the centuries-old history of Bobruisk. Capitalism reached the city on the Berezina River like it reached other cities in the Russian Empire. Thanks to the railway, highway Warsaw-Moscow, and the waterway, trade and industry began to develop at a high rate. As timber was the greatest treasure of the Bobruisk area, it took a major place in the transportation of goods. The statistics of the Russian Ministry of Trade and Industry for the year 1900 provide interesting information. It turned out that Babruisk apples were in great demand. At the beginning of the 20th century, local railway men carried 68,000 poods of tastiest produce, 20,000 of them to the capital and 10,000 to Moscow. Among the imported goods were salt, bread, and metal. Since the time of the Decembrists, Bobruisk had been inseparable from the revolutionary events in the Russian Empire. In April 1898, the manifesto of the First Congress of the Russian Social Democrat Workers' Party was published here. It hosted the Bobruisk Social Democrat Bund Committee, a group of the Lenin Iskra supporters, and from 1904, the Bobruisk Organization of the Russian Social Democrat Workers' Party. During the 1905 revolution, Bobruisk inhabitants participated in the January protest strike against the shooting of workers in St. Petersburg, in the October All-Russian General Strike, and in the December actions. After the events of 1905, the economic situation of the city gradually stabilized. Trade of timber and goods of woodworking industry, especially with Ukraine, developed at a high rate. The population of the city grew. At the beginning of the 20th century, there were 38,431 people in the city, and in 1914, already 42,300 people. Central streets were paved and lamps were fixed. The architectural view of the streets changed and cultural life became lively. Cinemas, or electro-theaters as they were called then, emerged in Bobruisk. Gigant, that belonged to a certain Belinki, and Vesmir, that belonged to Feinberg. In the village of Telusha, 10 kilometers away from Bobruisk, next to the Orthodox Church, one can see the tomb of Natalia Alexandrovna Vorontsova-Vilyaminova, a granddaughter of the great Russian poet Alexander Pushkin. Babruisk inhabitants remember the couple of the Vorontsov Veliaminovs for their educational activities and charity. They provided money for a school and the church and took part in the creation of the city library, which has survived to this day. Russian emperors often visited Bobruisk. It was often connected with the inspection of the troops. February 1916. The First World War is in full swing. There has never been such a bloody war in Europe before. Russian troops are demoralized and suffer heavy losses. Soldiers start deserting the detachments that are to be sent to the front on a mass scale. In addition, provocators and revolutionaries actively work with the soldiers. It seems that it is impossible to stop the disintegration of the army. Babruisk has always been a major military center, and Emperor Nicholas II decides to boost the drooping spirits of the soldiers who have to go to the front. The parade that the emperor inspects and the religious procession are expected to inspire soldiers with confidence in their victory. A year later, Nicholas will be dethroned and the First World War will end disastrously for the Russian Empire. In 1917, Bolsheviks take power. A Soviet of workers and soldiers' deputies is made. However, a couple of months later, in January 1918, legionaries from the Army Corps under the command of Dovner Musnitsky start an uprising, and in February the city is occupied by the Germans. Nevertheless, in the autumn, it again passes over to the Soviets. 9 months later, it is occupied by a different kind of invaders, white Poles. Only in the middle of 1920, the city returns to a peaceful life. Babruisk remains a major military center. In 1929, military maneuvers took place in Bobruisk. They showed possibilities of the most advanced military equipment in the Soviet Union. The country was recovering from the world and civil wars, revolutionary events, and economic devastation. By the mid-1920s, the city industry had been steadily functioning. There had emerged a woodworking mill, furniture and clothing factories, a scales factory. Before the Great Patriotic War, Babruisk had taken first place in Belarus by the industrial growth rate and became a major industrial center in the country. In those years, a flying club was organized in the city, where Boris Kavzan, hero of the Soviet Union, got his training. He is the only pilot in the world who made 4 ram attacks and remained alive. On the eve of the 60th anniversary of the liberation of Babruisk from the Nazi invaders, one of the city streets was named after him. On the 22nd of June, 1941, the war came to the land of Soviets, the most horrible war in the history of humankind. Nazi Germany was bringing a new order to other nations. Already on the first war days, the Bobruisk District Military Registration and Enlistment Office mobilized those who were liable for military service in an organized way. New regiments were made of reservists, the 21st Road Servicing and 420th Howitzer Artillery Regiment. In spite of the heroic resistance of the city defenders, the enemy broke through the defense near Bobruisk, captured the city, and reached the Berezina River. The city had been occupied by the Nazi invaders from the end of June 1941 to June 29, 1944. In the summer of 1941, the Nazis created 4 death camps with 8 departments and affiliations. Barbaric experiments were tried on the prisoners who were kept in the Bobruisk death camp situated in the fortress. The anti-sanitary conditions, hunger and cold resulted in an epidemic of typhus. To expand the epidemic, the Hitlerites put healthy prisoners of war together with the infected ones. In October and November 1941, about 600 to 800 people died daily, and in winter up to 1,000. On November the 7th, 1941, one of the barracks of the camp was set aflame by the order of the representative of the Wehrmacht High Command. Prisoners who ran out of the burning building were shot by the machine gun. In December 1941, more than 3,000 half-naked prisoners of war were put into cargo wagons and open goods trucks under the pretext of being sent to Minsk. All of them died on the way.
В ночь 6 на 7 ноября 1941 года
In November 1941, the Nazis turned residential areas on the southeast outskirts of the city into a ghetto. The invaders convoyed the Jewish population there from all parts of the city. On November the 6th, they brought the people from the ghetto to the forest, where special ditches had been prepared. They shot everybody. Everybody.
Людей поставили по 100 человек и расстреливали на краю рва. После этого присыпали немножко землей и расстреливали следующую партию. Таким образом, здесь было расстреляно 14 тысяч человек. Жутко даже представить себе ту картину, которая была в ту ночь. Осень, холодно, дождливо, дует ветер, разрывая тишину. Фашисты гонят в Каменку евреев. Сердце словно чувствует беду. Пригнали в лес, построили у ямы, собачий лай, гортанный крик. Дети плачут, обнимают маму. А жизни остается только миг.
Over the years of the occupation, the Nazis killed nearly 100,000 Soviet citizens in Babruisk and its vicinity. From the first days of the occupation, there appeared underground resistance groups in Bobruisk and, in its vicinity, partisan detachments. The Bobruisk resistance movement functioned continuously from August 1941 till June 29, 1944, the day of the liberation of the city.
В ноябре месяце из Бобруйска начали выходить группы в партизанские отряды.
Already in November, groups started to flow into partisan detachments. They are Oktябрьский, Klitschev, Parichi, Starые Dorogi district. During the whole period of the war, the Bobruisk underground organization worked not only in the city itself, but also supplied partisan crews and brigades with people. There were 17 underground groups in the city. According to official information, there were 255 people in the organization. But in reality, there were many more. A few patriots were killed and left no true names for secret purposes. 110 members of the Bobruisk underground movement were awarded orders and medals.
Партизаны – это патриоты, это под зову сердца пришли на борьбу с врагом.
Partisans are patriots who started their struggle against the enemy at their own will. Nobody made them do it. One could sit on the fence, could be anything, but he joined the partisans. It means he came of free will, took up arms and defended his homeland as a patriot, a true patriot of his homeland.
Двигаясь навстречу Красной Армии, партизаны все чаще и чаще сталкивались с врагом.
On June the 23rd, 1944, the Soviet army started a broad offensive to liberate the whole of Belarus from the Nazi invaders. The troops of the First Belarusian Front were given the task to defeat the enemy grouping in the area of Babruisk and continue the offensive in the direction of Babruisk-Minsk and Babruisk-Baranovich.
Минуя вражеские укрепления, по непроходимым, казалось, местам, войска фронта загнали в клещи бобруйскую группировку противника. На реках Белоруссии моряки Днепровской флотилии огнем боевых кораблей поддерживали сухопутные части.
Мы тщательно готовились учитывая болотисто-лесистую местность.
We had been carefully preparing for the offensive, taking into account the marshy, wooded country. Without this preparation, it would have been really tough. Everything started really on June the 24th, 1944. And I should say the operation did not start equally successfully everywhere. According to Hitler's orders, Babruisk, like a few other Belarusian cities, was proclaimed a fortress and had to defend itself till the last soldier. The enemy managed to create a powerful defensive line, Vaterland, which had deep echelons. Our soldiers had to meet stubborn resistance.
Немцы буквально город превратили в крепость. Танки были закопаны в улицах, в садах, в огородах.
The Germans practically turned the city into a fortress. Tanks were dug in the gardens and vegetable gardens. The Germans took every measure possible. They even launched an attack in a drunken state. On June the 28th, they managed to break down the defense line at the juncture of regiments 254 and 526 and break out of the encirclement into the area of Sichkova. From the memoirs of Marshal Konstantin Rokossovsky, Babruisk military commandant General Gammon managed to create a powerful all-round defense. Houses were used for weapon emplacements, streets had barricades, tanks were dug in at the crossroads. All the entrances to the city were meticulously mined. As a result of the Bobruisk offensive of the right wing of the 1st Belarusian Front, under the command of Army General Rokossovsky, a 40,000-man strong enemy grouping was surrounded by June the 27th. The so-called Bobruisk Pot was formed. Rokossovsky suggested, let's talk like humans. Let us not spill blood. You are surrounded and you cannot break through. Capitulate. But they rejected capitulation. Well, Rokossovsky, as the commander of the front, had to say only one thing. Comrades, begin. 625 planes, hundreds of guns, tanks, famous Katyushas brought down fire upon the enemy. During one day, more than 11,000 bombs fell upon the enemy. On the next day, June the 28th, the Soviet army completed the liquidation of the encircled enemy, and on June the 29th, the city of Babruisk was liberated. Senior Sergeant Pechkurov, commander of the 1st Battalion of Infantry Regiment 1199, was one of the first to enter his native city. He was born and brought up here, and he was the one who climbed the roof of the Flying Club and hoisted the banner of victory over his native city.
День добрый, мать Беларусь, кончается твоя черная ночь. Над твоей горящей землей уже поднялась заря освобождения. День добрый, счастливые братья наши. День добрый, солдаты великого маршала. Идут герои наши красноармейцы.
During the 6 days of the offensive, nearly 50,000 Hitlerites found their ignominious death in the Bobruisk Pot, while over 23,000 were taken prisoner.
За время наступления Красной Армии в Белоруссии Германия потеряла десятки лучших дивизий и тысячи солдат и офицеров.
20 military units and formations got the honorary title Bobruisk. This is what Babruisk looked like after the introduction of the new order. 3 terrible war years had turned the city into ruins. The population decreased threefold, and by July 1944 made up only 28,000 people. Again, the citizens of Babruisk began to restore their city. The theatre started functioning already in 1944, and on September the 1st children went to school. Over 4,000 boys and girls started classes in the 19 schools of Babruisk. Among the priority issues were the restoration of the telephone, telegraph and radio station. The Bobruisk water pipes were restored almost immediately. The city needed water. The electric power station and the bakery plant started functioning next. Then came the turn of big industrial enterprises like the Lenin machine building plant and the Dzerzhinsky clothing factory. Step by step, the city industry increased its production in spite of the difficulties of the post-war years. Practically immediately after the liberation, the regional hospital for 400 patients was opened and 2 polyclinics were restored. The oncologic dispensary started its work in only 2 rooms in this building. During the first post-war 5-year period, the work of schools, clubs and children's institutions was organized. 2 movie theaters, 9 clubs and over 30 libraries were opened. The city swiftly gained importance in the Republic. On September the 20th, 1944, the Babruisk region was formed. This administrative unit existed till 1954. In the 1950s, Babruisk is already a major industrial and cultural city. It is 5th in Belarus as far as the volume of the industrial produce is concerned, and one of the first in relation to population. The plywood and woodworking plant has considerably grown and increased its production. At that time, it was the largest not only in Belarus but also in Europe. Its produce was used for decorating Moscow Lomonosov State University and the Palace of Science and Culture in Warsaw. It got an honorary red banner of the CPSU Central Committee, the USSR Council of Ministers and the All-Union Trade Union Central Committee.
Предприємству присваюється звання фабрика видатної якості і високої продуктивності праці.
During these years, small enterprises created to improve the post-World War city economy are enlarged. Today, only old residents remember artels or cooperatives, Zarya, Red Transport Worker, Third 5-Year Plan or Shvei-Prom. In 1950, there are already 3 primary schools, 10 7-year schools and 9 secondary schools in Bobruisk. Over 14,000 children study there. Training courses are organized for teachers. The drama theater was established in 1957. The newspaper Communist, dated January 4th, 1957, runs. On the first day of the new year, many Babruisk citizens witnessed a joyful event in the cultural life of the city, the birth of its own drama theater. Representatives of the theater community of the Republic's capital, the BSSR Ministry of Culture and other guests came to see the first performance of the young company, Ravaged Nest. In 1991, the newspaper Communist was renamed Babruiskое Житье. Poet Nikolai Avramchik, an honored artwork and honorary citizen of the Bobruisk district, published his first works in this newspaper.
Усі наші поети білоруські, починаючи
All our Belarusian poets, beginning with all of them, are my disciples and all went through my school.
Буравкін, це всі мої учні, всі вони пройшли через мої руки. І до Жені Янищиць.
In addition to the professional theater, there are amateur theater companies. In 1970, the Mogilev-Dunin-Marcinkevich Regional Drama and Comedy Theater opened its doors. Dunin-Marcinkevich was also born in Bobruisk. He is the most famous Belarusian cultural worker of the 19th century. Such famous actors started their career at the theater as Gennady Davytko, Tamara Mironova and Vitaly Barkovsky. In the 1960s and 70s, there appear industrial giants in Bobruisk. There emerge new enterprises, and the old ones increase their production. The construction of the Belarus tire plant necessitated the establishment in Bobruisk of an integrated house-building plant that specialized in constructing residential housing. It was organized on the basis of Construction Trust No. 13. Soon, a mechanical technological college and vocational technical chemistry school No. 95 were opened. They have trained thousands of workers and specialists. In addition, the tire plant financed the construction of the first trolleybus line in Bobruisk, which appeared on the city streets for the first time in 1978. In the 1980s, Bobruisk takes 4th place in Belarus as far as the volume of industrial produce goes. 3 times it became the winner of the All-Union and National Socialist Emulation movement. It got an honorary red banner of the CPSU Central Committee, the USSR Council of Ministers, and the All-Union Trade Union Central Committee. In commemoration of the city's 600th anniversary, the city was awarded an Order of the Red Banner of Labor for the accomplishments of its citizens in economic and cultural life and for their contribution to the struggle against the Nazi invaders during the years of the Great Patriotic War. At the beginning of the 1990s, the social, economic and political conditions radically changed. The collapse of the Soviet Union, severing of economic ties, hyperinflation, lack of raw materials and paralyzed economy. However, by the end of the 1990s, the situation in the young independent state had started to change for the better. Belarusians managed to preserve their industry, which became the springboard for the new economy. Today, Babruisk remains a major industrial center. 45 different enterprises produce 1/3 of the industrial output of the Mogilov region. Produce of many Babruisk plants has become a trademark of the Republic of Belarus. Babruisk has got 630 shops, 596 small retail shops and 6 markets at the disposal of its citizens and visitors. About 6,500 work in trade. A wide assortment of good and high level of service are maintained in retail trade. The housing construction sector occupies a major place in the city economy. 235,000 square meters of residential housing have been put in commission from 2005 to 2007. Such socially important objects as the new bridge over the Berezina River, a trolleybus line to residential areas 5 and 6, the tourist hotel, the sports complex Bobruisk Arena have been built. Great work has been done to beautify the streets. Today, the city health service system includes 5 polyclinics and their affiliations, 5 clinics, the kid home, orphanage, an emergency station, a regional center of hygiene and epidemiology. Over 900 doctors work there. 3 of them have a PhD in medicine and 1 is an honored doctor of the Republic of Belarus. The inter-district oncologic dispensary was put into operation in Babruisk in accordance with the President's program. It is equipped with the latest medical equipment. Residents of several districts of the Mogilov region get medical aid here. On the right bank of the Berezina River, there is the Lenin Sanatorium. It is situated in a picturesque setting. The medical profile of the sanatorium is determined by 4 mineral springs that are qualitatively different from one another. The sanatorium caters for people who suffer from gastrointestinal tract diseases, diseases of locomotor apparatus, and of peripheral nervous system. For more than 10 years, the Babruisk affiliation of the Belarusian State Economics University has been offering its services at the educational market. During these years, it trained 2,000 professionals working in different spheres of national economy. Today's system of education in the city of Bobruisk includes 2 institutions of higher learning, 5 specialized secondary, 7 vocational technical schools, 3 gymnasia, 27 secondary schools, 2 basic schools and 2 evening schools. Young people have got every opportunity to develop their creative potential. 12 libraries, an arts palace, centers of culture and entertainment, a museum of local history, an exhibition hall, the Mogilov Dunin Martinkevich Regional Drama and Comedy Theatre, 3 children's music schools and an art school keep their doors open to all those willing to visit them. 3 companies have been given the title Honored Amateur Company of the Republic of Belarus. They are the Yunis Dance Ensemble, established in 1975, Kukushechka, and the Folk Choir. Annually, an international festival of folk art, the Garland of Friendship, takes place in Babruisk. Among its guests have been companies from Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, Poland, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Germany, Turkey, China, Latvia, and other countries. We're here for the first time, but we like everything here. People, the weather, music. We're for the first time in the city of Bobruisk, but we like the city very much. It is quiet and beautiful, but we especially like the people who are so benevolent. We are in raptures to be here. It is a very beautiful and clean city. We have rarely seen a city like this. We can compare it with the Czech Republic. It is as peaceful and quiet there. A very clean city. Everything is quite positive. We wish you all, citizens of Bobruisk, a wealth of health, good luck and love. Elena Piskun, Viktor and Anatoly Rineysky, Leonid Kitev, Sergei Lishtvan, Pyotr Yanovsky are the names of famous sports people, world champions, who have been trained by Bobruisk coaches. This is the young generation, would-be champions. They know whose example to follow. The Belshina football team is one of the best football clubs in Belarus. Babruisk coaches have already trained 2 national teams in canoeing and kayak paddling that represent Belarus at international events.
Здесь имеется огромная плеяда более молодых ребят.
There are a great number of young people here. If we examine the results of the competitions from the year 2001 to this day, we shall see that people from here won over 60 medals of all kinds at European and World Championships. Mikhail Ryabikovich's pupil, weightlifter Andrei Remnov, triumphantly finished his performance at the 29th Olympic Games. He won not only a gold medal, but also set 3 world records. Babruisk citizens also rejoiced that Andrei Mikhnevich, who puts the shot, he won a bronze medal at the Olympic Games. It will be no exaggeration to say that the Bogdanovich brothers, Alexander and Andrei, students of the Bobruisk State Olympic Reserve School, made the whole world wonder about the distribution of places on the Beijing podium in the 1,000-meter double canoe event. They won the Olympic gold. Over the last 10 years, new training centers and sports complexes have been built in the city. The state sports complex Babruisk Arena was put into operation in May 2008. The diameter of the Ice Palace is 118 meters and did conceit 7,000 people. The ceremony of the laying of the memorial capsule took place on October the 7th, 2006, on the construction site of the sports complex Babruisk Arena. It was attended by the President of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. The brass capsule with a letter to our descendants was decorated with the inscription, "A healthy nation, a strong state." Soon the President attended the inauguration of this magnificent modern edifice. One should mention that the Ice Palace had been built on the President's instruction within a very short time. It had been built within 20 months, twice less than required by the standards.
Необходимость создания таких объектов, она обусловлена, во-первых, самой жизнью, во-вторых, вы прекрасно знаете.
It is necessary to build such objects. It is determined by life itself. Secondly, as you know, we have certain achievements in sports in general and in hockey. It is clear that we had to create a good basis for doing this kind of sport. But I would like to say that today the project of the Ice Palace envisages a possibility of people doing 16 kinds of sports. As a matter of fact, a center has been built for holding major competitions not only in hockey, but also various games, weightlifting, martial arts, etc. The city received the head of state more than once. In the year 2000, he inaugurated the new building of the oncologic dispensary, and in 2001, the President unveiled the new bridge over the Berezina River. In 2006, Alexander Lukashenko gave awards to the best agricultural workers of Belarus at the National Festival Fair Dazhinki 2006. For a few days, Babruisk became the agricultural capital of Belarus. the eve of the festival, the city turned into a huge construction site.
В рамках подготовки к Дожинкам, конечно, была сделана большая, колоссальная работа.
While preparing for the Dozhinki festival, enormous work has been done to beautify the city and to clean up the territory. Of course, while getting ready to celebrate the city's 620th anniversary, we did a number of things, like painting the walls, beautifying the streets, and so on. I think the very preparations for the festival stimulate local executive committees and every participant. It is like every household. When the New Year or Easter comes, we all begin to paint the walls, hang wallpaper. We want the holiday to be held in comfortable conditions. It was the first grand-scale restoration of the city during the whole post-war period. The city met the participants of Dozhinki with repaired buildings, freshly painted houses and beautiful streets. 2,500 trees had been planted, 680,000 flowers, 17 hectares of flower beds had been brought into order. Sports complexes and the stadium Spartak had been completely rebuilt. Pavements on 18 streets had been paved with new tiles. 25 streets had been asphalted and used. Roads of 180,000 square meters had been repaired. Along with the city, 10 district centers had been repaired. In reality, Babruisk got a new lease of life.
Как любой житель города Бобруйска, я хочу, чтобы город этот становился.
Like any citizen of the city of Bobruisk, I'd like the city to become more beautiful so that it could be comfortable to live here. Major tasks that we have are the development of the city's economic potential, the development of sports, one object has already been built, the development of the social sphere. I think that any person, not only the head of the city executive council, but any person who lives in the city must do everything to make the city more beautiful, more comfortable and clean, and the well-being of the people should grow with every day. One simply has to work much.
Все больше и больше. Для этого надо просто работать.
Ты посмотри вокруг, ты посмотри, пойми, нигде ты не увидишь сразу столько красоты. Мой город лучше всех, хоть небольшой он пусть. Желаю мира и любви тебе, родной Бобруйск. Наш город лучше всех, хоть небольшой он пусть. Желаю мира и любви тебе, родной Бобруйск.
The city of Babruisk is ancient, but it is also quite young. Wonderful people live here. They know how to work well and to rest properly. Years pass, centuries change one after another. One epoch replaces another one, but the city on the Berezina River has been and will be here, the glorious city of Bobruisk.